This video is sponsored by DevMountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, DevMountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time position in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? So I have an HTML CSS project for you today. We're going to build an elegant looking landing page with a blurred image or blurred effect. So right now you can see that this main background image is blurred, but if I hover over it, it comes into focus, and then this part here actually blurs, okay? So it kind of reverses, which is pretty cool. And I was just going to do that, but I decided to add on a little more just to make it a full page. So we have a couple sections. We're using the grid system. So we have 3 columns here. We're also using Font Awesome for these icons here. Then we're using the grid to create a 2-column layout here, and then just a simple footer. Okay, and this is completely responsive. Now, the hover effect obviously will just be on desktops and laptops or whatever, anything with a mouse. But if we look at the responsive view here, let's go to an iPhone X, you can see that it still looks pretty good. We're going to add some media queries, shorten this up a bit so it doesn't take up the whole screen. We got rid of the little text here, shrunk the logo a little bit. We added media queries for the grid so that these will stack instead of being side by side. We added a little border there, if you can see that. And everything just looks pretty nice. So if we look at landscape mode, we're going to add a media query for the height so that there's no text, just the logo here. And immediately when we scroll down, you'll see the rest of the site, and it looks pretty nice. So, I've taken into account all sizes, even if we look at like an iPad. So iPad will take up the whole screen, and then we'll go down. For some reason, it won't let me scroll all the way down here, but that should be fine. So that's what we'll be building, guys. Hopefully you enjoy it. And of course, you can rebrand this, use your own logo, change the background image, whatever you want. That's absolutely fine. So let's get started. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, I have the final project open right here, and then I have VS Code on the left, okay? So if you're following along, just create a folder. I called mine Elegant Blur Landing, and I just created an index HTML and a style CSS, okay? They're both completely empty. And then I just have the 2 images, which is the logo and the showcase. Now, you can get the images from the link in the description. I'll probably put this on CodePen, so you can just grab the images from there. Or the background image you can get from pexels.com. I think I just searched for code. And yeah, this image right here. And I just grabbed the 1920 by 1280. So if you want to download it from there, you can. All right, so I'm going to close the sidebar up now that you can see what we have as far as structure. Very simple, and we're going to just start with the HTML. So I'm going to put exclamation and hit tab. That allows Emmett to create some basic head and body tags for us. The title, I'm just going to say Traversy Media, and feel free to rebrand this for your own company or whatever you want to do afterwards. If you want to, put your own logo, change the background image, whatever you want to do is fine. Everything I do on my channel is completely open source, and you're free to, use it and change things up. So let's say style.css. We want to link to our style sheet. In our body, we're going to work on this whole part here, which is going to go into a header tag. Okay, so an HTML5 semantic header tag, and it's going to have a class of showcase. Okay, I'm just using Emmett here by saying .showcase and then hit tab. It'll give me a class of showcase. Okay, so in here, I'm going to put a div with the class of content. And then this class represents everything in here. Okay, all this stuff is going to be in this content class. Okay, we're going to have our logo, which is going to be inline. So I'm just going to do an image tag, and we're going to do source is going to go to logo PNG, and we're also going to give this a class of logo. And then for the alt, I'll just put in the company name. Okay, so let's save that. Now, to view this, you can open your index.html file on your file system if you want. I have a plugin for VS Code called Live Server, so I'm just going to go ahead and say open with Live Server. And we shouldn't be able to see the logo because it's actually white, and we have a white background, so don't worry about it if you can't see anything yet. All right, so let's see. Under the image here, still within the content, we're going to create a div with the class of title, and I'm just going to say welcome to Traversy Media, and underneath that we're going to have a div with the class of text, and I'm just going to say lorem 10 and hit tab, and that's going to give us 10 just dummy text, just dummy words. Okay, so if I save that, it should look like that. Okay, so it's going to look horrible until we get to our CSS. Next area is going to be the services, so that's going to go under the header. Okay, so right under the header here, let's say services, I'll put a comment here. This I'm going to put in a section. I'm going to give it a class of services. Okay, and if you've watched me create layouts before, I usually do kind of the same thing, just create a header at the top and then different sections and style them differently. So in here we're going to have a container class, and we're not using Bootstrap or anything. That's just what I'm going to call the class that I'm using. I'm also going to give it a class of grid-3, okay, because I want it to be a 3-column grid, and we're going to style that ourselves. Okay, no framework or anything like that. So here we basically want to have 3 different divs. They're going to have an icon. Okay, that's another thing we need to do, is we need to get font awesome. But for now, let's just put an I tag with the class of FAB and the class of FA-YouTube, and that'll give us the little YouTube icon. Okay, now you know what? Let's grab Font Awesome real quick. So if we go to fontawesome.com and we go to how to use, we just want to grab this link right here, this link tag with the style sheet, and paste that right above our own, and save, close that up, and now you can see we have the little YouTube icon right there, which is way too small. Now Font Awesome gives you classes you can use to change the size. So I'm going to do FA-3X and save, and that should make it 3 times the size, and that should be good for us. All right, so underneath that we'll do an H3 with the title of the section here. So we'll say YouTube, and then we'll do a paragraph, and I'm just going to do lorem 10. I think I did 10 tab. Yeah, it looks about right. So if I save that, you can see this is our section right here. Again, it's going to look horrible until we add our CSS. So what I'll do is copy this whole div, and we want 2 more. So 1, 2. And then we'll change the second icon is going to be FA-chalkboard-teacher, and change this to courses. We'll leave the text, that's fine. This icon here is going to be FA briefcase, okay, and then we're going to change this to freelancer projects, or freelancing projects. Okay, so we'll save that. Now we have those 3. Why is that not showing up? That's because only the social media icons have the FAB with Font Awesome. This should actually be FAS, both of these. And there we go. So now we just want to do the About section underneath it. So let's say About, and let's do section class About. And we're going to have a container in here as well. And this time we're going to have a class of grid2. And let's do we get our little laptop icon. So this thing right here, notice how it's in the middle. I'm going to have a utility class called center. So I'm going to create a div with the class of center and then put the icon in there. It's going to be FAS. And let's see, it's going to be FA-laptop-code. And then I'm going to do the biggest size possible, which is the class of FA-10X. Okay, so let's save that, see what it looks like. Good. And then let's see, so this will be a grid. This is the first grid item. So we want one more div, which will be our second grid item. And I'm just going to put an H3 in here and say about us, and then a paragraph, and I'm going to do lorem 40 tab just to give us a bunch of sample text. And then the very last thing we want to do is our footer, which is very simple. So just a footer tag. I also want everything aligned in the center, so I'm going to give it our utility class of center, and let's just put a paragraph. I'll say Traversy Media. Let's do a ampersand copy semicolon, which is an HTML entity for the copyright sign, and we'll say 2018. If you want to do a little JavaScript to make this dynamic, this year dynamic, you can do that as well if you want. So we'll save that, and that's all of our HTML, okay, which looks absolutely horrendous. So let's head over to our CSS. All right, so this is the important part. Let's start off with just the body. So I want the background to be black, but I want it to have a little bit of opacity, which is like transparency. So we're going to use an RGBA, which is red, green, blue, alpha. And for red, green, blue, we want 0 for all of those because we want it to be black. But I want just a bit of opacity or alpha, so I'm going to say 0.9 for the last value. All right, so we'll save that, and there we go. Now we can see our logo. I also want to get rid of any margin, so we want to say margin 0 for the body. The color, make sure the color is white, so I use hexadecimal. And the font family, you can use what you want. I'm going to use this Segu UI, Tahoma, Geneva, Verdana, Sans Serif. All right, now for the way that we want to do the hover, we can't put the background image onto the actual showcase element right here. What we want to do is put it on a child element. So we could do like background like that, and we could style it. But instead of doing that, instead of adding an actual physical div right here, I'm just going to use a CSS pseudo element called after, which basically kind of inserts it through the CSS without it actually being in the DOM. So you can style it as if it were an element just like that I just showed you. So we do that by saying showcase after. And you can use this to insert content too. Like you could actually put text in here or whatever, but we're going to leave that blank. And then we want to set a height. And I want the height to be 100 viewport height. So it's going to take up the entire browser. No matter how short or tall the browser is, it'll always take up that height. Okay, and then the width we're going to set to 100%. We're going to set the background image to URL, and we want showcase.jpg. Okay, we want to set a couple background properties like size, which I want to cover. Okay, we want to set the background repeat to no repeat. I know I could put all these on one line, but I like having them in their own individual styles. And then background position is going to be center. Okay, now if I save this, it's still not going to show yet, so we have to just display this as a block. Okay, now if I save, we'll see the image. And I know that it's underneath the content, but don't worry about that. We're going to position this absolute inside of this. Okay, so don't worry about that just yet. And let's see, we want to add a filter property. And we want to say blur, not blue, blur. And we can put the pixels that we want, which is going to be 10 pixels. I'm also going to add a dash webkit. I'm going to add a prefix of webkit dash filter. I think you need this. I'm not sure if you need this for any other browsers, but you might. I'm really bad at what's okay in what browsers and so on. So let's say blur 10 pixels here. Okay, and if I save that, you can see that it's now blurred because that's the default state, right? We want it blurred until we hover over it, and then it goes to normal, and then this should blur. Okay, so that's the functionality we want. We also want to add a transition here. Okay, so basically any properties that can transition, like positions and stuff like that, obviously the blur, or filter or whatever we want to apply. So we're going to say transition all, and let's do 1 second, so 1,000 milliseconds. Okay, and then I think that's it. I think that's all we need for this showcase after. So let's save that. And now let's add the hover effect. So we'll say showcase. Let's do showcase. Actually, we want to do hover. Hover, and then we want to do the after. Okay, and we're going to just change the filter blur. So I'm going to copy both of these lines right here, paste that in, and let's just change it to 0 pixels. Okay, so if I save that, and now when I go and hover over it, you can see that it's no longer blurred. Okay, so yeah. All right. So let's see, the next thing we want to do is the content. The content meaning this part right here. We want that to be inside of this image, obviously. We also want to style a bunch of it. The logo is huge, the text is too small, so we want to take care of that. So let's say content, class content, and let's also add content logo, content title, and content text. You don't have to put the content before all these, but I think it looks a little neater, more structured. So for the content, actually let's make the logo smaller first. So the logo, I'm going to give a height of 180 pixels and a width of 180. Okay, so that'll shrink that down. Now let's go to our content and let's position it absolute so that it actually goes inside the image. Once I save that, you can see now it's inside the image, but we have an issue here, and that's that the image is actually over the content. Okay, so this is an easy fix. We just need to change the z-index. Okay, z-index, basically the higher it is, the closer to you it is. Okay, the closer to the front. So let's add a z-index, and just adding a 1 should do it. So if I save that, now you'll see it's over the showcase, over the image. All right, so let's position this thing. We're going to do top 10%, and let's do left 50%. Okay, so that's going to put it over there. We're also going to add some margin. So we're going to do margin top, which is going to be 105, and then we're going to do margin left, which is going to be negative 145 pixels. So if I save that, that brings it more towards the middle. We're going to set a width of the content to 300, and we're going to set a height of 350. Okay, so we'll save that. Let's make sure all the text is aligned to the center. So I'm going to do text align center, and then I'm just going to add a transition all for this as well. So we'll say transition all 1 second. Okay, save that, and now you'll see that it kind of floats in from the side. That's because of the margin top and left. So that should be it for the content itself. Now let's do the title. All right, so for the title, I'm going to change the font size. Let's see, I had 36 pixels. Let's use rem units here, though. We'll do 2.2 rem and save. Now, rem units, basically one rem is equal to whatever the pixels of the HTML element, so this right here, which by default is 16. So this would be 2.2 times 16. That's the number of pixels that this would be. I have a whole video on rem and em units if you want to check it out. And then let's do a margin top, because I want to move this down a little from the logo. So we'll do 1 rem, which would be 16 pixels in this case. All right, now let's do the text, which is this right here, which is too scrunched up. So let's say for the text, I'm actually going to change the line height, make it a little taller. So let's do 1.7 Okay, and then let's do a margin top here as well. And we'll do, let's do one rem here as well. Save that. That pushes it down a little bit. That looks a lot better. So this is just about done. One thing we want to do though is make the content blur when we hover over this and the image comes into focus. So I'm just going to go up here and we want to add it to the showcase hover. Not after, just showcase hover and then content, class of content, and then we want to blur that. So I'm going to grab these two lines and we're going to do 2 pixels on the content. Okay, save that. And now when we come in, you'll see that it blurs 2 pixels. Okay, so it's not as harsh as the background image. So now we can move on to this part. Okay, this is the this is the services. It also has a class of grid 3, which is right here. So we want to use the grid on that. But let's first take care of the container, which we're using here and down here in the about. Okay, so same idea as like how Bootstrap and the other frameworks use the container. We want to just push everything to the middle, give it like a max width. So let's say max width of 960 pixels. We'll do a margin auto, which will push it to the middle. We'll do an overflow hidden, so no scroll bars or anything like that, and then some padding. So I'm going to do 4 rem on top and bottom and 1 rem on the left and right. And let's save. And now if we go look, you see it's pushed down more and it's away from the sides, which is good. So now let's take care of the grid or the columns. And the grid system is actually really easy to use when you're just doing something like this. A lot of people get overwhelmed when they're learning it, but it's really easy. So let's give this a class of grid 3. Or define our class of grid 3 here, and we just want to say display as a grid. Now if I save that, we're not going to see any difference here because we haven't defined how many columns we want to use, and obviously we want 3, so we want to say grid template, let's say grid template columns. And you could do like 20 pixels. That would give you 3 columns of 20 pixels. But we want it to be even, and we want it to go all the way across. So we want to use what's called a fractional. So 1FR 3 times. And if I save that, you'll see that it's now in 3 columns. Now a shorter way to write this is actually to use repeat, and you want to say repeat 3 times 1FR. Okay, that's going to do the same exact thing. And then I just want to add a little bit of gap in between the grids. So I'm going to say grid gap, let's say 20 pixels, and save. Okay, so now, and I mean, it's that easy. It's very simple to do. So this part here, we want the background to be light. Okay, so did we give it a class? Let me just see. So we have our about here. And no, we didn't give it we want to give this a class of light, or let's do bg-light. Okay. And then one other thing I wanted to do is the footer. I'm going to give that a class of bg-dark. Okay, so these are like utility classes. And then also these right here, I want to be centered. So I'm going to add the center class to the grid 3 div. So center, and save. Now we haven't done anything with center yet, so let's just do that real quick. And all center is going to do is text align center, and it's also going to have margin auto. And let's save. And if we go down here, now these are centered good. So let's style the BG light and BG dark classes. Okay, so these are like utility classes. So BG light, we want to do background of F4 3 times, so like almost white, kind of a really light gray, and then the color of the text I want to be 333. Okay, I almost never use pure black text. I use 333 quite a bit. So if I save that and we go down, now this has a light background. Okay, and for the BG dark, let's say BG dark, and we're just going to kind of reverse these. So this will be 333, and then for the color, we'll do it's just reverse from the BG light. And I applied that to the footer, and you can see that you have that here. I'll explain why it's not covering the whole thing when we get to that. But for now, let's deal with this about. We want this to be over here. We basically want 2 columns. And remember, I gave it the class of grid 2, so what I'll do is copy the grid 3 class, and let's make this grid 2. And only thing we need to change here is this right here. Instead of 3 columns, we want 2. And I'll save, go down, and there we go. So you can see how easy it is to align things with the grid. Now, I think that's it for about. So for the footer, I want to do a couple things. I want to get rid of this black right here. The reason for that is because this is a paragraph, and paragraphs by default have, I think, 10 pixels of margin. So that's where this is coming from. So we need to remove that. So in our CSS, let's say footer paragraph, and let's set the margin to 0 and save. And if we go down, now you can see that that black is gone, but this is way too skinny, so we just want to add some padding to the footer. So we'll say footer padding, and we'll say 2.2 rem, and save. And now there we go. So that looks much better. So I think that's pretty much it for the desktop version of the site. So if I stretch that out, that looks good. Okay, that's good. Now when I start to get really small, like right here, this, I don't like how we have columns here. I would much rather them be stacked. Let's actually use the Chrome Tools device toggler thing. So this right here. Okay, so yeah, I want to change a few things here. So I don't want this to take the whole screen up on mobile devices. I only want it to take up half. So we're going to create some media queries. Let's go down here and let's say small screens. And we want to change this from 100 viewport heights to 50 viewport heights, and that's going to be on the showcase after. Okay, so we'll say height, let's change it to 50 VH. Okay, and we'll save that. Let's actually make this smaller so that we can see. I think this needs to stay open, so we'll just kind of shrink it up. And let's get rid of this sidebar. Okay, so that made it, you can see it's half the size, but now this is is way too far down. We need to fix this. So that's the content. Wait, what am I doing? I didn't even do the media query. What a dipshit. I want to do media. And let's do max width of 560 pixels. Oops, don't need that. And then we'll take this and we'll go ahead and move that in here. Okay. So now if we get rid of that, okay, so it's 100 viewport heights, but when I get to 560, you'll see it goes down. Okay. So like I said, we need to deal with the content. So let's say dot content. Make sure you're in the media query here. And we're going to say from the top, let's do 5%. And then let's do margin dash top. Let's do 5 pixels and save. Okay, so that makes it a lot higher. The logo, I'm going to make a little smaller. It's 180 right now, so let's do content, logo. Let's do height 140 and width 140 pixels. Okay, that makes that a little smaller. Let's see, next thing, let's do the text here. I don't even want that to display. So let's say content text display none. All right. Yeah, I think that actually looks pretty good. I was gonna make this smaller, but I don't think we need to. Yeah, that should be fine. All right, so let's see. We want to move on to this part. So I want this to be stacked instead of 3 columns. So we want to take our grid 3, and up here where we said template columns repeat 3, I'm going to just grab this one line here because that's all that needs to be changed. And we just want to change it from this to just simply one FR, okay, 1 row or 1 column. So let's save, and now it's stacked. Okay. Now this, we want the same thing, so what I'll do is just simply add in the class of grid 2 and save, and now that's stacked. Now this is a little too close. I also want to just put like a border, a little border in between each one of these. So I'm going to say, let's actually grab onto services because this is the only place I would want to do this. So I'll say services div, okay, because we have a class of services and each one of those is a div. And then we're going to do border bottom. Let's do 333. And let's do dashed, and let's do 1 pixel. And then for padding, we'll do 1.2 rem on the top and bottom and 1 rem on the sides, and save that. And there we go. So now you can see we have these little borders in between. All right, so the last thing that I want to do is the landscape. Let me just check this out real quick. Let's see what this looks like if we change this to landscape. Okay, not very good. So we're going to add another media query, except it's going to be for height. Let's say, oops. And a lot of people, including myself, sometimes forget about landscape when we do responsive design. So let's do media or at media, and instead of a width we want to do a max height, and I'm going to do 500 pixels. Okay, and then what I'll do is I want the title, content title, and the content text to display none. So save that and those go away. And then let's move this up a bit. So let's do just content, and let's say top 5% and save. Actually, is that what I had? No. Yeah, that's good. I mean, if we want to move it, we could do top 0. There we go. So that's kind of like right in the middle. And then when we scroll down, it just immediately goes to the about, because this is, remember, this is set to viewport heights. And we're wider than 560, so it's still at 100 viewport heights. Awesome. So I think that's it, guys. If you have any issues like with browsers or devices or anything like that, feel free to leave it in the comments. If even better, if you have a solution to it, leave that in the comment. But yeah, I think that this is pretty good. Make this real big, and yeah. All right, thanks for watching. Please leave a like or a thumbs up if you like this video, and I will see you next time, guys.